And first of all, this TOC is very important course from GATE point of view. Why is that? Because in from TOC in GATE exam, you will have around 10 to 12 marks of questions, around 10 to 12 marks in GATE exam. So this is like 10 marks in GATE exam from one subject. That is a lot of weightage. Okay, because anyway there are almost 10 subjects. So this TOC has this much weightage, around 10 marks, at least 10 marks. You can you can assume that okay, there will be at least 10 marks of questions. Okay, so that's why this is very important course, and this is very easy course also. Actually, just like discrete mathematics, this is also a easy course. And the discrete mathematics is is like mathematics. Okay, in that you require a lot of practice. In TOC, that is not the case. Of course, you need practice, but the thing is, everything that we will cover in this course, you will see that questions will be asked from that only. From outside, they will not ask any question. So we will cover everything, all the variations, all the example, everything we will cover. So this is from the GATE point of view. This is a very important course, and hence you must, like you can say, 10 marks are a lot of marks in GATE exam. So in this subject, what we will see. So let me tell you what are the things that we will see. So I will tell you about this course. I will tell you about why we are studying this course. Why everyone is studying this course? Why this course exists in computer science? Okay, what is the purpose of this course? And all these things we will talk about. But before talking about those things, let me tell you the things that we will study in this course. Throughout the course, what are the things that we will study? So throughout the course, we are going to mainly study. Our main focus will be on three things. Wait a second. Wait a second. Some problem with this pen. Just give me 1 minute. Just a moment. Some problem with this tablet, writing tablet. I'm correcting it. Okay, yeah, now it's okay. So what was I saying? Yes. So we study three things, mainly three things in this course. Throughout the course, we will study these three things. First, we will study something called languages. What is a language? We will study this. So our main concern will be around this language. Of course, we will define what is a language. Everything we will define. But let me just give you the overview of this course, the things that we will see. So that nothing looks new to you. You already know what are the things that are coming. So the first thing we will see is what is a language, what are the languages, and all these things. Then basically we have something called language. we will define what is a language. So just like English language, okay, just like any language, okay, maybe English language, Hindi language, C programming language, these kind of languages. So basically we will also define something called languages. Now once we have language, then also we should have grammar, right? Like, okay, English language also has a grammar, Hindi language also has a grammar. So in English language we study grammar. Okay, so all the valid English sentences that you speak, uh, they must be like grammatically correct, right? So these kind of things, of course. So similarly here also analogy is there. So here also we will define something called language, then we will define something called grammar. So this grammar will actually generate this language, just like, okay, English language is generated by the English grammar. Okay, so in the high school, in the school, you have studied this grammar, English grammar, and all those kind of things. So English language is generated by English grammar. Okay, now secondly, the third thing that we will see will be called machines, or we will call them automata. So normally, actually, these are nothing but machines, but we will call them, the word that we will use is automata. What is automata? Automata is a machine. Okay, it's like you have C programming language. So your C programming language is a language. Okay, so your language is like C programming language. Okay, the grammar, actually C is generated by some grammar. So we will see what grammar is that. So C is generated by some grammar. Now then we have some machine or automata that accepts this language. So for example, like, okay, any C program, you give that C program to a compiler. So you can write, okay, this automata is nothing but a compiler. So this compiler takes a C program, and if that C program is a valid C program, then this compiler will accept it, and it will not give any error. But if that C program is not a valid C program, then this C compiler will throw error. So we can say that if you have a valid C program, then this machine, this automata, what is this automata? This automata is C compiler. So this C compiler will accept that program. But if your C program is not a valid C program, if this is not a valid C program, if there is some error, there is some syntax error, then basically this C compiler will reject, or you can say this C compiler will throw error. So we can say that this C compiler will not accept. Okay, and also I want to let you know that, okay, don't worry if you are not familiar with C programming language, okay, this compiler, okay, if these things you are not familiar with, then there is nothing to worry, because this is not our concern. We are not going to study C programming language, we are not going to study C compiler. I am just giving you some analogy. Okay, so this is just an analogy. This C language is an analogy, this C compiler is an analogy. So this C language is analogy to the languages that we will describe. I will define what is a language in our course. So this C language is analogous to that language. Okay, now this grammar, we will define what is a grammar. So this grammar is again analogous to like English grammar. So for English language we have English grammar. Now this machine, this automata, uh, we will study, and this C compiler is analogous to this automata. So these are the three things we will study throughout this course. So we will study languages, we will study grammar, we will study automata or machines. Now, uh, of course, there are many different kind of machines possible. There are many different kind of machines. We will see a very simple machine, or we can say we will see a very simple model of automata that is known as finite automata. So we will see this. Okay, we will study this. What is a finite automata? This is a type of machine. This is a type of automata. This is a very restricted kind of machine. This is a very restricted type of automata. Okay, then we will study something called PDA, push down automata. Then we will study something called Turing machine. So these are the three main important machines automata that we will study: finite automata, PDA, Turing machine. What is finite automata? What is PDA? What is Turing machine? All these things we will study. You can think of them like this. This Turing machine is actually equivalent to our computer. Okay, our computer, whatever like computer you are using. So this Turing machine is equivalent to that computer, because as I told you, these are nothing but machines, or these are machines, or you can say automata. So this Turing machine is actually equivalent to our computer. Okay, this PDA, like, okay, is not equivalent to computer, because okay, there are some things that this PDA cannot do, but this Turing machine can do. So actually the power increases when we go from finite automata to Turing machine. What do I mean by power increases? What do I mean by power? Power means, see, this finite automata is a very restricted kind of machine. Okay, you can think of this finite automata as maybe some video game. Okay, some video game. So if you have a video game, or you can say a Nokia mobile. So if you have a Nokia mobile, a very simple Nokia mobile. Okay, in early days people used to use these Nokia mobiles. Okay, like 13, 10, and these Nokia mobiles were there. Okay, so you can think of this finite automata as a Nokia mobile, because you can see in this Nokia mobile there were very less number of functionalities. Okay, so like, okay, you could call, you could play a snake game. There was a snake game, you can play that snake game. Or there was a bounce game. Okay, so there was a bounce game. So these two games you can play, and you can call. This was very restricted functionality. Okay, but then came smartphone. So this, you can think of, remember, I am just giving you analogy. Okay, these are not the definitions. Okay, you should not think of these machines like this. Okay, but this is just an analogy, because we have just started, and as we proceed in this course, you won't need this kind of analogy, you won't need. Okay, so like it's not like, okay, if you go to some interview and they ask you what is finite automata, then you are saying that this finite automata is like mobile, it's like a Nokia mobile. So they will just reject you. Okay, because this is just an analogy for the purpose of understanding. And as we proceed, we will see the formal definition of finite automata. Okay, similarly we will see the formal definition of PDA. But this is in this analogy, basically I'm saying that just like you have a Nokia mobile, a very restricted kind of functionality we have in Nokia mobile, in this Nokia 1310 mobile. Okay, now then PDA, you can think of PDA as a smartphone. Okay, as a smartphone. In that smartphone you can do everything that you could have done with this Nokia mobile. You could do everything. You can call, or you can also install this bounce game. Okay, maybe you can install this bounce game from Play Store, or you can install this snake game from Play Store. So basically everything that you could have done with this mobile, all the functionalities are there in this smartphone also. But there are some additional functionalities. For example, you can use the internet. So that is a additional functionality. Now this Turing machine is like a computer, because with this computer, actually with the computer you can do a lot more things. Okay, okay, you can think of this like a computer. Okay, with computer you can do everything. Okay, so that's why basically these are you can think of the machines automata like the power is increasing, because this Turing machine can do everything that a finite automata or a PDA can do. So these machines are actually, you can say, their power is increasing, means their functionality is increasing when we go from finite automata to Turing machine. Okay, so we will study these machines. I just want to tell you that we will study these three machines, and these three machines actually will be our main focus for this course. Now we will see some languages also. Some languages, like, okay, we will see something called regular language. Okay, we will see something called regular language. We will see something called CFL language. We will see something called CSL language. Okay, if I will give you full form, I will give you everything. Don't worry about it. I'm just giving overview, so don't worry about the full form and all those things. And we will see something called recursive language, and the last we will see something called RE language. So these like five kind of languages, 5 or 6 kind of languages we will also see. Okay, there is something called DCFL here. So these 5 or 6 kind of languages we will study. Okay, so these 3 kind of automata we will study, and also some 4 kind of grammars we will study. Okay, so there will be different type of grammar. Okay, like these grammars are like type 0 grammar, type 1 grammar, type 2 grammar, type 3 grammar. All these things we will study in this course. So this TOC course is actually all about these 3 things: languages, grammars, machines. These are the 3 things this course is about. Okay, so what is going to be our flow? Our flow is going to be like this. First we will study what is finite automata. This is the first machine we will study, because this is a very simple kind of machine. So we will study this finite automata. Okay, and when we study this finite automata, then actually this finite automata, this is a simple machine. Okay, this is a simple machine. Actually this machine is equivalent to regular languages. Don't worry, we will define what do we mean by this equivalence. What do we mean by this statement that finite automata is equivalent to regular languages? we will define everything, so you do not have to worry about anything right now. Okay, this is just an overview. Hmm? So this finite automata is actually equivalent to regular languages. Okay, and this finite automata, or you can say these regular languages, they are equivalent to regular grammar. So as I told you, actually everywhere we will see three things: machine, language, and grammar. Okay, just like you have English language. Okay, so then for English language you have English grammar. So you can say that English language is equivalent to English grammar. Why, what do we mean by equivalent? We can say that this English language is generated by English grammar. Also we can say that for every English language you have a English grammar. So these kind of things, statements you can say. Similarly here we have something called regular language, and this regular language is generated by regular grammar. So for every regular language you have at least one regular grammar, and every regular grammar generates regular language. Just like English grammar generates English language, English grammar does not generate Chinese language, right? So English grammar generates English language. So you can say regular grammar also generates regular language. So these three things are there that we will study finite automata. After actually these all these things will run will run in parallel. So everything will run in parallel. Okay, finite automata, regular language, regular grammar. Also one more thing is there, that is regular expression. So these four things we will study. This is going to be our part 1. Okay, so in the part 1 we will study these four things. Okay, everything about these four things we will study, every single thing. What is the definition of all these four things? Okay, why we are saying that they are equivalent, what is the relation between them, how to convert one to another. Okay, all these things we will see. So this is going to be our part 1. The second part will be, we will see the next machine, and that next machine is push down automata. This push down automata is actually equivalent to CFL languages. CFL languages, and they are equivalent to something called CFG, means context free grammar. So you see, again here we have a machine, a language, and a grammar. So you can see in the complete theory of computation subject we have three things. In always we study all these things in parallel. So this PDA, this is a machine, and this CFL, this is a language, and this CFG, which is a grammar. So these three things we will study in the part 2. Then in the part 3 we will study the next machine, that is Turing machine. That Turing machine is actually equivalent to RE language. We will see the full form of RE language and all these things we will see. And this is equivalent to something called type 0 grammar. Something called type 0 grammar. So all these things are equivalent. Again, this is a machine, this is a language, and this is a grammar. So this is going to be our part 3. So in these three parts we will complete our study of theory of computation, and there is few remaining things that we will see in the middle of them. Actually it's not like, okay, at the end we will see, but in the middle of them we will see few things more. Like we will see something called closure properties. So there is something called closure properties, so this we will see. We will also see something called decidability. Okay, so all these things we will see: decidability, undecidability, and we will see countability. So all these things we will see. These are the four main important things that we will see. Now coming to GATE exam, what can you say about the marks distribution? Like, okay, these are four parts that we have, and which of these parts actually have the most weightage? So if I assume that there are 10 marks, if I assume that 10 marks of questions will be asked from TOC subject, if I assume that, then out of these 10 marks, around 6 or 7, you can say around 6 marks, okay, around 6 or 7, you can see, like, okay, around 6 or 7 marks will be from this part 1. So you can see one thing, that if you just study this part 1 only, if you are comfortable with this part 1, means if you are comfortable with finite automata, regular language, regular expression, regular grammar, all the things that we study in this part 1, if you are comfortable with all those things, then okay, also so you can see around 6 marks you will get from this part 1 only. From this part 2 you can think like almost 2 marks, at most 2 marks will be will come from this part, this part 2. This part 3, there is no mark. Actually you can think like, okay, maybe 0 mark will come from this part 3, almost 0 mark, okay, 0 or 1 mark. So actually this part 3 is just for our understanding purpose. From gate point of view, they won't, they do not ask questions from this part 3, they do not ask. But if they are not asking questions from this part 3, that does not mean that we should skip this. That is not what I mean. Why? Because if we do not study this part 3, okay, if we do not study this part 3, then this part 4 we will not be able to understand. So that's why, to understand the part 4, we require part 3. Okay, if I talk from the perspective of gate exam, okay, if I do not talk from the perspective of knowledge, okay, all those things, if I just keep aside, okay, so then from the gate point of view, you can see this part 4 actually is also again important, because almost you can say almost 2 to 4 marks of question, 2 to 4 marks of question you can take from this part. So you can see almost at most like 6 marks of questions will come from this part, okay, and maybe 2 marks of questions you can expect from this part. From this part 3, they won't ask you any question, you can expect 0 marks of question from this part 3. But this part 3 is important for understanding the part 4. If you do not understand part 3, then you cannot understand part 4. But and also this part 4 will be around 2 or 4 marks, 2 to 4 marks. At least 2 marks will be there from this part 4, or they can ask you maybe 4 marks of question. If they are asking 4 marks of question from part 4, then they will ask maybe 4 marks of question from part 1, and then 2 marks of question from part 2. So this is going to be the uh, like weightage. This is the classification of weightage from the gate exam point of view. So you can see this part 1 and the 4, these are very important from gate exam point of view if you want to score almost all the marks in TOC subject. Okay, so this is the complete classification, and also this is the actually this is the way we will study things. So we will spend much time in this part 1. In this part 1, because we will study this TOC subject for almost 40 to 45 hours. So almost 40 to maybe 50 hours, okay, if we will require then we will study this for 40 to 45 hours, or maybe 50 hours in worst case. So in these 40 hours, if I take these 40 hours, then almost 20 hours we will give to this part 1, almost 20 hours. So that's a lot of time, almost 50% of time we will only study this part 1. Okay, and this part 2 we will study for maybe for 6 hours we can study this part 2, and maybe for 4 hours we can study this part 3. Then for almost 10 hours we will study this part 4. So we will study these topics like the weightage in the proportion of weightage. Okay, so like, okay, this part 1 has a lot of weightage, so we will give this almost 20 hours. So this is actually the overview of this subject. What are the things that we are going to study? So this is the complete overview of the things that are going to come. Now the next question is, okay, so this is just about this course, okay, this is just about this course, what we will see. But now the main question is, why we are studying this course? This is the main question. You might be wondering why we are studying this course. Like, we study mathematics, we study C programming language, we study operating system, because they directly has some use. Okay, you can see operating system has direct use. Right now we are using operating system on our machines. So why we are studying this TOC subject? This TOC subject is actually a theoretical subject. Even though this is a theoretical subject, it has many uses in practical applications also. Okay, so actually this complete mostly actually this TOC subject is studied from the theory point of view. So mostly when we study this TOC subject, at that time we do not do any practical. Mostly this is a theoretical course. Okay, but it has some practical applications also, and also it has some theoretical applications, some very interesting theoretical applications we have. And the most important, actually, the theoretical application that is actually very intriguing application, and that is the question, two questions we have. Like if I ask you, uh, you will see this question is a very interesting question. Okay, from where this world came, from where this universe came, okay, from where every human being came. Okay, so many theories are there from where this universe came. Okay, many theories you must have heard. Okay, I have also heard many theories. So like, okay, there was a big bang, and these kind of things we study. And so research is going on, scientists are working on finding the answer to this question, from where this universe, from where this life came. So all these questions, so you can see these questions are actually very interesting question. We want to know, like we want to know whether there is a god or not. So this is again an open question. Some people believe that there is a god, some people do not believe. But the thing is, there is no proof. Of course, some people just prove that, maybe some people give proofs like this. Okay, you see, there is a, you can find Ram Setu. Okay, so that's why Ramayana was there, so Ram Bhagwan was there. So these kind of arguments people give, but these arguments are not proof. If they were proof, if they were indeed proof, then everyone would believe them. But they are just arguments. Okay, so you can see these are very interesting questions. We want answers to these questions, like, okay, from where this world came, from where this universe came, from where life came. Okay, so or maybe this question like a very silly question, पहले मुर्गा आया कि अंडा. Okay, पहले मुर्गी आई कि अंडा. Okay, whether this egg came first, or whether this hen okay, whatever is the pronunciation. So this came. So whatever, basically these are the questions. Okay, very interesting questions we find them. So there is two more interesting questions from the scientist point of view. And the first question is every problem in the world, can every problem in the world be solved by computers? So that is the first question. So I can say, is every problem solvable? This is my first question. Is every problem solvable? For example, if I tell you that, okay, this addition problem, now addition problem is solvable. Our calculator can solve that problem, you can solve that problem. Many algorithms are there to find addition, many algorithms are there to find multiplication, many algorithms are there to find different many other things. Okay, many problems can be solved, like, okay, sorting problem, this can be solved using merge sort, quick sort. This shortest path problem, okay, this can be solved using Dijkstra algorithm. So all these things you must have studied in your courses, in your algorithm course, data structure course, in many different courses. You must have seen many problems, and then you must have seen their solutions also. But this is a very interesting question: is every problem solvable? Okay, solvable. So is every problem solvable? This is a very interesting question. Okay, I find this question very interesting. You might also find this question very interesting. The answer to this question we want to search. Okay, so actually this question is very important, very interesting, and that's why many researchers are working on the TOC subject, because this TOC subject will answer. It will give you answer to this question. Like, this is not an open question, this is a very uh, well studied question, and to this question we have an answer. And the answer is that there are many problems which cannot be solved by computer. So okay, for example, okay, there are many problems which cannot be solved by computer. Now you might be wondering that, okay, maybe we cannot solve those problems by the computers that we have today, but maybe after 100 years, or maybe after 1000 years, we can have some advanced computers, maybe quantum computers or whatever. Okay, whatever heavy word you want to use, you can use, maybe quantum. Okay, any word you can use. The thing is, these problems that we will see in this course, these problems that are not solvable by any computer that we have today, actually they will never be solvable. Whatever computer you bring, whatever machine you bring, whatever quantum computer you make, whatever advancement you make in your technology, does not matter. After 1 lakh years of advancement also, these problems will not be solvable by any computer or any machine that we can make. Okay, so these problems we will see. Okay, what are those problems? Okay, so many problems we will see. Okay, there are like around maybe 10 or 20 problems we will see, and these problems are not solvable by any machine, any computer. We will never be able to solve them, because we will prove that these problems are unsolvable irrespective of on which machine we are solving them. Whether you are trying to solve them on quantum computer or any computer or any machine. Okay, whatever machine you want to you want to use, you can use. These problems will be unsolvable. So this is a very interesting question, and you must have found this question very interesting. And actually we will see one more thing we will see. Actually, the problems that we can solve, okay, there of course there are infinite number of problems that we can solve, of course. Okay, so like many problems, you have solved in your whole life, you have solved many problems. So there are infinite number of problems that we can solve using computers. So okay, these problems I will call solvable, means tick mark means solvable. So there are infinite number of problems which are solvable by computers or machines. Okay, maybe by using mobile, maybe by using calculator. So maybe by using quantum computer, maybe by using computer. So basically by using any machine, there are infinite number of problems that are solvable. But there are a lot of problems which are actually not solvable. So like, okay, these solvable problem are actually very less. Of course they are infinite, but there are many problems. Okay, there are big these unsolvable problems are actually a lot more unsolvable problems we have. So all these questions we will answer in this course. So this first question we will answer in this course. There is another question that is very interesting, and that question is, if we are okay, in this first question we were talking about which problem is solvable, which problem is not solvable. So this question we were answering in this first problem. Okay, now if let's only discuss about those problems that are solvable. Let's only discuss about those problems which are solvable. Of course there are many problems. If you have any problem, that then that problem is either solvable by computer or that is not solvable by computer. So let's talk about those problems which are actually solvable by computer. Okay, now in these problems also we have two kind of problems. One problem which take very less time to solve. So some problems take very less time to solve, some problems take a lot of time to solve. So you must have studied these kind of problems. For example, you have a sorting problem. This sorting problem can be solved in n log n time by using merge sort. So this is not a huge time. For example, if you have, okay, let me give you this idea. So let's assume you have, for example, let's assume n is 100. Then your merge sort will take 100 multiplied by log 100. These many seconds it will take. Okay, these many seconds. Now log 100 is almost about 7. So 7 into 100, that is nothing but 700 seconds. Now 700 seconds is not a lot of time. 700 seconds, okay, means like, okay, few minutes, few hours, whatever. So this 700 seconds is not a lot of time. Okay, it's a very small time. Okay, but we have some problems for which we do not have right now we do not have any algorithm which can solve them in this much less time. For example, you have Hamiltonian path problem, you have traveling salesman problem. There are many problems, you must have studied about them. We will not study these things in this subject, but in algorithm subject we study those things. Okay, like Hamiltonian path problem is there, traveling salesman problem is there. Okay, so many problems are there, and for those problems we have almost like exponential time complexity. For example, if you give me let's assume if you give me 100 vertices in a graph, if you give me 100 vertices, so if this n is equal to 100, then those algorithms will take 2 power n time, 2 power 100 seconds. You can just calculate what this 2 power 100 second is. This is a very huge time. Okay, you can just try to calculate. This is a very huge time, and I think I will have to check, okay, whether this is true. I think 2 power 64 second is such a long time. It's such a long time that this Kali Yuga will be over. Okay, like we will be gone. Okay, after us many upcoming generations will be gone, but this time actually will not over. So this is a lot of time, this 2 power 64 seconds. Okay, or you can say this is a lot of time. You can just check on internet, you can just check how much time it is. So in years you can find, okay, in years how much time it is, you can just try to find. So you can see this 2 power 100 second, this is just a lot of time. Okay, okay, so for example, if you have this problem, let's assume this problem you have, and for also let's assume that for this problem we do not have any efficient solution right now. Let's assume that the only solution we have right now, let's assume that takes 2 power n time. Then then even though this is solvable by computer, okay, because we have this algorithm, we have this program, we have this algorithm that can solve this problem. But the thing is, the time that it will take is 2 power n. So if I give n equal to 100, then it will take 2 power 100 seconds. So I will not be alive to see, I will not be alive to see the result. So you can see it's a lot of time. Okay, so that's why among the problems that are solvable, among those problems, we talk about something called efficiently solvable. Efficiently solvable means those problems which do not take a lot of time. For example, this merge sort, it does not take a lot of time. It only takes, for example, when you take n equal to 100, then it takes only 700 seconds. That's not a lot of time. But there are problems for which we do not have any efficient solution right now. Okay, and for those problems, our machine, our computer will take a lot of time. If you have n equal to 100, then itself it is taking a lot of time. I won't be alive to see the output. If I run this problem on that machine, on our computer, if I run this problem and if I give n equal to 100, then I will die, and this machine will this computer will still just keep on computing. So you can see this algorithm, this solution is of no use to me, right? Even though we have a solution, and this solution will take 2 power n time, but the thing is, this solution I can't use. Of course, if I use this solution, then I won't be alive to see the result of this algorithm or the result of this solution. So that is the reason we are interested in finding those problems which are efficiently solvable, and also we are interested in finding those problems which are not efficiently solvable right now. Okay, let me just connect my laptop to charger. Just give me one second. If anyone has any doubt, then you can, right now you can ask in this chat box. Anyone has any doubt? Anyone? So, okay, this is just an overview. You can see these two questions that we were talking about. These are very fundamental and very interesting questions. So what are those questions? Let me tell you. If you have a problem, then either this problem is solvable, okay, either this problem is solvable, or this problem is not solvable. We will see. So in this TOC course, we will see those problems which are solvable. We will also see some problems which are not solvable by any computer. These problems are solvable by computer. These problems are not solvable by any computer. Now, coming to these solvable problems, we have something called you can say efficiently solvable. We have something called efficiently solvable. Means they take polynomial time. Okay, they take less time you can think. Okay, and some problems we have which are not efficiently solvable, means inefficiently solvable. Some problems are inefficiently solvable. Okay, so these actually in this TOC we cover this question: which problems are solvable, which problem are not solvable. This question we cover in this TOC subject. We try to find the answer to this question. This question this question is discussed in the subject, design and analysis of algorithm. In that subject we discuss this question. So in our TOC subject, I will, at the end of this course, I will discuss this question, and I will show you many such problems which are actually not solvable by any computer. And when I say any computer, then I mean that any computer that is existing today or that will exist after many years. So they are not solvable by any computer or any machine or any mechanical device. They are not solvable. We will prove them. Okay. So even if you are very intelligent, even if you do a lot of advancement in the technology, then also these problems will not be solvable. Okay. So this we will see in this course. Don't worry, this question we will see in this course. Now also, when I say, remember, when I say efficiently solvable and also when I say inefficiently solvable, so these efficiently solvable means today, as of this date. So today we have this date, okay, 9/9/2020. Today at this date, these problems have efficient solutions. So for example, a sorting problem, for example addition problem, multiplication problem, all these problems have efficient solutions today. Okay. So of course we already have efficient solutions for these problems. We already have these problems which are inefficiently solvable. For these problems, at till this day, matlab means right now we do not have any efficient solution. Right now we do not have, but maybe after 100 years, maybe someone can someone can come up with a efficient algorithm to solve these problems, maybe. So we cannot deny that possibility. So remember, when we say that some problem is inefficiently solvable, then we mean that right now it is inefficiently solvable, because right now we do not have any efficient solution. Right now we do not have, but maybe after a few years, maybe after 100 years, maybe after 1,000 years, someone can come up with some efficient solution. We do not know, maybe it can happen. Okay. So here that is and remember, here when we say not solvable, at that time we are saying that not only today, but also after thousands of years, or after any amount of time, these problems will still remain not solvable. So that is the difference. These problems are not efficient. These problems do not have efficient solution right now, but they might have efficient solution after few years. These problems have no solution right now, and they will not have any solution after 100 years, after 1,000 years also. So if you are finding these questions interesting, because I find these questions very interesting, so if you are finding these questions interesting, then we will answer this first question, we will answer in this course, and the second question will be answered in the DA course, design analysis of algorithm. At that time the second questions will be answered. So these are very important questions for the computer scientist. Many computer scientists, many researchers are working on these two questions. Okay. So this first question is actually not much research is going on. Very less number of researchers are working on the first question, because this first question we already have answer. We already have unsolvable problem, we already have solvable problem. But the second question is very interesting. In the second question we are saying that right now we do not have efficient solution, but maybe after 10 years we can have, maybe someone can come up with a efficient solution. So that's why the second question is still a very popular area of research among the computer scientists. Many computer scientists are working on this second question, because actually there is a price. Actually, if you find the efficient solution to traveling salesman problem, or to any of these problems which do not have efficient solution right now, as I told you, there are many problems which do not have any efficient solution right now. For example, there is something called traveling salesman problem. Okay. We don't need to discuss what is this traveling salesman problem, but there is some problem. Okay. There is some problem known as traveling salesman problem, and also there are many other problems. For these problems we do not have any efficient solution right now, but let's assume that you prove it. Let's assume you provide a efficient solution for this problem. Let's assume you provide a order of n square solution, or maybe order of n cube, or maybe order of n power 10. So basically some polynomial time solution. If you can provide such a solution for this problem, then actually you will get, I think, $7 billion you will get. Also a Nobel Prize, also a Nobel Prize, and I think also a Turing Prize. So basically you will just become the god of computer science immediately if you can give a efficient solution for any of these problems. Okay, there are many problems like this. This TSP is one of those. This traveling salesman problem is one of those. There are many other problems. For any of these problems, any for any of these problems, if you can provide a efficient solution that that takes less time, that takes polynomial time basically, then actually you will get $7 billion. I think right now this is the price. Maybe they might have increased it, or I don't know. Last time I checked, at that time this was a, I think, $7 billion. And also you can see how much it is. 7 billion, I think 7 million or 7 billion. I will have to check. But anyway, this is a lot of money. 7 million or 7 billion, whatever. This is a lot of money. Okay, and also Nobel Prize, Turing Prize, and also I think they will just give you the like they will just make you president of America. Whatever, you can see this is that much area of interest. That's why many researchers, many computer scientists, many mathematicians are working on this area right now. But anyway, this area is not of our interest. We are talking about TOC subject, and in this TOC subject we will only concern on the question which problems are solvable and which problems are not solvable. So this is our question for this course. Anyone has any doubt right now, then you can ask. Anyone, any doubt? So this is just to give you some motivation for this course, okay, because many interesting questions we will answer in this course. And also, of course, there are many practical right now there are many practical applications of TOC also. For example, in compiler design. So in compiler design also we have applications of TOC. You will see that in compiler, in any compiler, for example C compiler or whatever compiler you have, in any compiler, if you have any compiler, then in that compiler there is a in that compiler there is a phase called lexical analysis phase. There is something called lexical analysis phase. So in every compiler we have such phase. So this lexical analysis is a phase of this computer and this compiler, any compiler we have. This lexical analyzer is actually equivalent to finite automata. So as I told you, we will study three machines: finite automata, push down automata, and Turing machine. So this lexical analyzer that we use in compilers, that lexical analyzer is nothing but a finite automata. Okay, so of course there are many other uses also. Like in compiler also, in compiler we have something called parser. This parser uses context free grammar, CFG. As I told you, there is something called CFG, and when we will study grammar, at that time we will study this grammar, context free grammar. So this parser uses CFG. Okay, also this parser uses something PDA, some form of PDA, some form of PDA. Okay, so these kind of things, actually these are the practical uses of the things that we will study in this TOC subject. And also at the end of this course, when we will study Turing machine, at that time I will prove no, not prove, but actually we will see not a proof, but basically we will see that this Turing machine is actually equivalent to our computer, modern computer. And you see this Turing, remember one thing, in 1936, this Alan Turing, this was the person who gave this Turing machine. So in 1936, this Alan Turing gave something called Turing machine. In 1936 he gave this Turing machine. Remember, at that time when he gave this Turing machine, at that time there was no computer in this world. Okay, computers came very late. Okay, maybe I don't know when computers came, but maybe I think after 1950, 1960, at that time computers start coming. I am not like sure exactly, but that was the time when computers came in the existence. Okay, so you can see at that time in 1936, when Alan Turing gave this Turing machine, at that time there was no computer, there was no existing computer, there was no such thing as computer at that time. Okay, computers came very late, but at that time when there was no computer, at that time he gave one machine, one model, one machine, one automata he gave, which is actually equivalent to computer, today's computer. you can see over the years computer has have grown very fast. Okay, so in the earlier times we used to have very restricted kind of computers. Nowadays we have very fast computers. Okay, so after few years we will have quantum computers. Okay, after few years many. So in technology there will be a lot of advancement after 100 years, after 1000 years. But you see one thing, that whatever advancement you do, whatever computer you can make after 1000 year, after 1 lakh year, whatever machine you can make, whatever computer, whatever mechanical device you can make, actually this Turing machine is equivalent to that computer or that mechanical device. So you see in 1936 he gave this model which is actually equivalent to computers, our general purpose computer. This Turing machine is equivalent to our computers. So like that is a very interesting thing, right? Okay, he was a genius. I think he was, when he died, I think he was just 24 or 25 of. So in this age, I think in this age he gave Turing machine. No, at that time when he gave this Turing machine, at that time he was just, I think, 24 or 25. At that time he proposed this Turing machine. At that time, this Turing machine that he proposed at that time, this is equivalent to today's computers. Okay, so anyway, so this is a very interesting thing that we will see. And also you can watch on this Alan Turing, there is a movie. If you want to watch, then you can watch. The name of the movie is The Imitation Game. You can watch. So of course there is this movie. This movie has actually not much to do with Turing machines. There is not much to do with Turing machine, this Imitation Game movie. This is just some war movie, World War II movie, World War II. Anyway, but this is an interesting movie. So all on Alan Turing this movie is there. So anyway, so in this course, the most important, the most powerful machine that we will study is Turing machine. And this Turing machine was proposed by Alan Turing, and so that's why maybe you might want to watch this movie called Imitation Game. If you want to watch, maybe you have already watched, but whatever. So so we have seen that this theory of computer TOC subject has practical uses also, mainly in compiler design. Okay, also in digital logic we also have use. If you have studied digital logic, and then in digital logic, if you see, when we study sequence circuit, at that time we study something called state diagram. So all these things we have. Basically I am just telling you that this TOC subject has a lot of uses in different fields of computer science, or also in different fields of mathematics. We have uses of the concepts that we study in this course. So that's why this course is a very important course. Also these two questions that I mentioned, these questions are very interesting, and we want to find the answers to this question, and we will find the answer to the first question that we talked about. We will find answer to that question in this course. Okay, so this is just a theory that I have already explained. Actually this is just to give you the motivation to study this course. So this first slide I have just put some you can say some theory I have written here. This is just for your motivation. Actually I have explained everything that is there in this in this. So you can see I have written some applications. So some real world applications are there. And also this is in this first paragraph I have mentioned the two problems that I was talking about, the two main interesting questions that I was talking about. What are the problems that are solvable, and what are the problems that are not solvable? Among the solvable problems, what are the problems that are efficiently solvable, and what are the problems that are not efficiently solvable? So anyway, this is the you can just go through this slide. After this class is over, I will upload this slide on the Google Drive and you can access it. Okay, so now this is enough motivation for this course, and now we will start our basic concepts. So remember, so far we have not seen anything. Actually for the last 1 hour I have just given you some motivation to study this course. That is the only thing that we have done for last 1 hour. Okay, some idea, so that you find this course interesting. Because if we do not talk about these kind of things, then you will just you will just keep on wondering, why are we studying this thing, why are we so these kind of things you might start wondering. So that's why I wanted to talk about the motivation to study this course, and also the practical applications of this course, and also the interesting questions that we will get answer in this course. So these are the three things we have seen so far. Now again, this is just an overview of the things that we will see right now. This diagram I have written here, but you do not have to worry about this diagram. We will study everything individually. First we will study something called type 3 grammar. As I told you, there are four types of grammar that we will study in this course. I have already told you this thing. So in this course we will study four types of grammars. Something called type 3 grammar, there is something called type 2 grammar, there is something called type 1 grammar, there is something called type 0 grammar. So four types of grammar we have. These these are the four types of grammar. This type 0 grammar has also another name. What is that another name? Unrestricted grammar. So this is another name for type 0 grammar. We will see why this is called unrestricted grammar. We will see everything. So do not worry about anything, and also do not you do not have to by heart anything. Okay, so don't start by hearting these things, because this is just overview, and once we start our course, at that time we will just go from basics. From basics we will start studying all the machines, all the grammars, one by one. First we will cover finite automata. At that time we will cover type 3 grammar. So you can see, first we will cover type 3 grammar, then we will cover type 2 grammar, then after few days we will cover type 1 grammar, then after few days we will cover type 0 grammar. So at this point, when we will have covered everything, every type of grammar, at this point when we will have covered every type of machines, at that time you will know everything. So this table, this chart, you do not have to by heart right now. Okay, this is just for for giving you the idea of the things that we are going to study. So these are the four type of grammars that we will study. And each grammar, as I told you, like English grammar generates English language, maybe Chinese grammar generates Chinese language. So similarly, these four grammars that we have, these four different type of grammars that we have, they also generate languages, different kind of languages. Okay, so for example, this type 0 grammar, this is also called unrestricted grammar. And basically this grammar generates this language. This oh, sorry, wait a second. Actually in this slide I have not written this, let me write it. So this type 0 grammar actually generates, as I told you, like, okay, English grammar generates English language. Similarly, this type 0 grammar generates something called RE language. Something called RE language. We will see what is RE language. RE language means recursively enumerable language. This is the full form. Recursively enumerable language. So don't worry about the full form, but the thing is, this type 0 grammar actually generates RE language. Type 1 grammar generates something called context sensitive language. Context sensitive language, CSL. This type 2 grammar generates something called context free language. Context free language, CFL. And this type 3 grammar generates something called regular language. So you can see every grammar is generating different kind of language. RE language, CSL language, CFL language, and regular language. So the regular language. So this type 3 grammar generates regular language. Now, so this is about grammars, this is about grammars, and this is about languages. So this classification is about languages. Also, uh, as I told you that like C programming language is accepted by compiler. So you can think of compiler as a machine, or you can think of compiler as a automata. So this this RE language is actually accepted by something called Turing machine. As I told you, we will see some different kind of machines, we will see different kind of automata, we will see. So this RE language is actually accepted by Turing machine. Okay, so this Turing machine, which I was talking about, Turing machine, Alan Turing machine. So this Turing machine actually accepts RE language. So every RE language is accepted by some Turing machine, and every Turing machine accepts some RE language. So there is a equivalence. Okay, so similarly, this CSL language is accepted by something called linear bounded automata. So there is a new machine. So far we have not mentioned this machine. This is the name of this machine, linear bounded automata. The reason I did not talk about this automata, when I was saying that we will study three kind of machines, we will study finite automata, PDA, we will study Turing machine. At that time I did not mention the name of this machine, I did not mention this linear bounded automata. The reason is that in GATE syllabus we do not have linear bounded automata. Also, this linear bounded automata, this machine is actually not well studied. Right now researchers are studying it, so the results are still pending. So there are many open problems here because many questions do not have answer right now. So researchers are working on it, and once they explore this linear bounded automata, then maybe after few years, people will start studying these linear bounded automata. So that's why we will not study linear bounded automata, because from GATE point of view this is not required, this is not in the GATE syllabus. Also this is not in any standard books. So whatever standard book you study for TOC subject, in that linear bounded automata is not given much weightage. Maybe one page, just for the introduction of this linear bounded automata, just one page maybe. Now, this type 2 grammar generates CFL language, and every CFL language is accepted by push down automata. So this machine we will study. Also, this type 3 grammar generates regular language, and this regular language is accepted by finite automata. So actually we will study things in this manner. First we will study finite automata. When we study finite automata, at that time we will study this type 3 grammar. This type 3 grammar is also known as regular grammar. Why this is known as regular grammar? Because this type 3 grammar is generating regular language. So because it is generating regular language, so we also call it regular grammar. Okay, and this then after the finite automata we will study push down automata. This type 2 grammar is also called CFG. What is CFG? Context free grammar. Why do we call it context free grammar? Because it generates context free language. Okay, so that's why we have given this name context free grammar, because the language is context free language. So we have also given this name. So this type 2 grammar is same as context free grammar, this type 3 grammar is same as regular grammar. So all these things we will study in this course. You in this slide you can find all these things. Now coming to the next thing. So now you can see one thing, you can see in this slide also, you can see in this slide one thing you can see. What is that thing you can see in this slide? In this slide you can see that every type 3 grammar is a type 2 grammar, every type 2 grammar is a type 1 grammar, every type 1 grammar is a type 0 grammar. Because you can see Venn diagram, and we have already studied Venn diagram in discrete mathematics. You can refer to the discrete mathematics recording, and there I have already discussed Venn diagram. But I won't skip anything, so let me just quickly give you overview of Venn diagram. What is a Venn diagram? Venn diagram represents a set. For example, if I want to represent a set, then I can use this Venn diagram. For example, okay, this Venn diagram I can use to represent a set. If our set is, let's assume 1 2 3 4, then this Venn diagram will represent this set, and in this Venn diagram we will have 1, we will have 2, 1, we will have 3, we will have 4. So these 4 elements are there. So basically this set is represented by this Venn diagram. So this circle is the basically the Venn diagram for this set. Now let's assume you have a set B, and let's assume your set B is 2 comma 4, 2 comma 3 comma 4. Let's assume this is your set B. You can see this set B is a subset of set A. You can see one thing, that this B is a subset of A, because every element that is in B is also present in A. So that's why we can say that this is a subset of, this B is a subset of A. Remember all these topics, this subset, set, Venn diagram, all these topics are basic concepts of discrete mathematics. In discrete mathematics course we have already discussed all these concepts. So I would request, also I would urge everyone to actually, after today's lecture, just go to the recordings of the set theory. So in discrete mathematics course, just go to the set theory section where we studied set theory. just watch the first and second lecture. Just watch the only the first and second lecture. There I have discussed what is a set, what is a function. These two things I have discussed there. What is a set, what are the operations on set, okay, all these things like Venn diagram, what is a set, definition of set, what is the definition of subset, all these things we have already seen there. So this won't take a lot of time. Just go through these two lectures, first and second lecture of set theory. So this is only thing you need to do, and after that you will be comfortable in every basic concepts that we will use from the discrete mathematics. Okay, so the thing is, you can see this B is a subset of A because everything that is in B is also in A. So I can say that every element in B is also an element in A. So this is the Venn diagram. So now you can see in this Venn diagram, in this Venn diagram, if you see in this Venn diagram, this type 3 grammar. So this circle, if you see this circle, this circle is representing set of all type 3 grammar, set of all type 3 grammar. You can see that every type 3 grammar is a type 2 grammar, because type 3 grammar, the set of type 3 grammar is a subset of type 2 grammar. So you can see that every type 3 grammar is type 2, every type 2 grammar is type 1, every type 1 is grammar is every type 1 grammar is type 0. So this is like equivalence. Okay, so this is the equivalence because you can see every type 3 grammar is a type 0 grammar. So this also can be visualized from this diagram. So this diagram is very like is a very good visualization of these four type of grammars. And remember, every type 3 grammar is actually type 0 grammar. You can say that every type 3 grammar is type 2 grammar, every type 2 grammar is type 1 grammar. So this is by Venn diagram. So you can just go through the Venn diagram, the basic, very basic concepts these are. And I do also I want to tell you that you do not require much knowledge for this TOC course. For starting this TOC course, we will see every single thing in the class, but these are very basic concepts, like what is the definition of a set, okay, what is the definition of a subset, what are the set operation, union of two set, intersection of two set, okay, Venn diagram. Venn diagram is a representation of set. So you see, these are very basic concepts, and we have already discussed these concepts in discrete mathematics subject, so you can refer there. Because if we start discussing these concepts again, then it will take it will unnecessarily waste around one class. Okay, so after today's lecture you can just go through the basic concepts of set theory from any book, maybe from Kenneth Rosen also you can study, or you can refer to the previous recordings. So all the recorded lectures are there, you can watch them also. Okay, now let's see the next thing. This is the next thing. As I told you, we have some four kind of languages. We have something called regular language, something called context free language, we have context sensitive language, we have recursive enumerable language. As I told you, there are four types of grammar that we have. Similarly, we have four type of languages, because every grammar generates some language. So if we have different type of grammar, four different type of grammar, then they will generate four different type of languages. So these are the four most important languages that we will see in this course. Something called recursive enumerable language, something called context sensitive language, context free language, and regular language. Also from this diagram you can see one thing, that every regular language is context free language, every context free language is context sensitive language, and every context sensitive language is RE language. Also one more thing, do not think that I am telling you to by heart these things. I am not telling you to by heart these diagrams. I am not telling you to by heart these Venn diagrams. I will prove everything. We will prove that every regular language is context free language, every context free language is context sensitive language, every context sensitive language is recursive enumerable language. We will prove all these kind of things. So there is nothing that you have to by heart in this course. Okay, so this is just for your quick overview, so that you are familiar with the things that we are going to encounter in this course. So that is why I am giving you this. You can say this is a map of your city. Of course, we have not entered in the city yet. We are outside the city. So this is a huge city, but outside the city, I am showing you a map, so that at least you are familiar with the structure of this city, so that when we enter inside this city, then it does not look completely new to you. Okay, so that's why we are giving some roadmap of this city, and the city is the TOC subject. This city is the TOC course. So, and everything that we are seeing in today's lecture is nothing but a roadmap. And this roadmap is actually very important, so that you do not find this TOC subject as like, okay, every day something new is coming, okay, every day some new grammar is coming, every day new language is coming, every day new machine is coming, so that you do not think like this. That's why I'm giving you this roadmap. Okay, now move on, let's move on. This again, the same thing that we have discussed so far. This is known as hierarchy, the hierarchy. This is also the thing that we have seen so far. This is also known as Chomsky hierarchy. If you see this diagram, if you see this diagram is known as Chomsky hierarchy. This is known as Chomsky hierarchy. Whatever is the spelling, hierarchy, hierarchy. So this is known as Chomsky hierarchy. Okay, this diagram is known as Chomsky hierarchy. We will see the proof of this thing also. We will see the proof. Why every type 3 grammar is type 2, why every type 2 grammar is type 1, why every type 1 grammar is type 0. We will see the proof of this also. Okay, so okay, this is known as Chomsky hierarchy. This is very important actually, the Chomsky hierarchy. Now everything that we have seen so far is actually can be is written in this slide also. You can see we have 4 type of grammars. So remember, these are the grammars, the type classification of grammar. These are the grammar: type 0 grammar, type 1 grammar, type 2 grammar, type 3 grammar. Type 0 grammar is also known as unrestricted grammar. Type 1 grammar is also known as context sensitive grammar. Why are we calling it context sensitive? Because generating the context sensitive language. So just like, okay, English grammar is generating English language. So why are we calling it English grammar? Because it is generating English language. So that's the way. Okay. This type 0 grammar is called unrestricted grammar. We will see why it is called unrestricted grammar. We will see. And also you can, because it is generating recursive enumerable language. So you can also say that this type 0 grammar can also be recursive enumerable grammar. Okay, so this type 0 grammar can also recursive enumerable grammar because it is generating recursive enumerable language. Okay, so similarly you can see all these things are here. We have seen everything here. Okay, automata also, for example, every type 0 grammar is called unrestricted grammar, and they are equivalent to recursive enumerable grammar. Sorry, they are generating recursive enumerable language, and every recursive enumerable language is accepted by Turing machine. So these are the 4 type of automata, these are the 4 type of grammars, and these are the 4 type of languages. And this is our complete course. Actually, this hierarchy contains our complete course. Now our target is just to see the proof of this hierarchy. This is the only target we have. Once we go through all these things, you can see there are 12 things here: for grammar, for machine, for languages. How many things are there? 12 things. These are the 12 things that we need to study for next 38 hours, excluding these 2 hours. For next 38 hours we will study these 12 things one by one. Okay, so now we will study our course. So far everything was just a review, or you can say everything was just a roadmap. Now we are going to start our course. So before I start this course, let's take 1 minute. If anyone has any doubt, then you can ask, because now we are going to start our course. From now onwards, nothing will be overview, everything will be in a sequence. In a sequence, we are going to study things, we are going to study many concepts, we are going to practice many questions on each concept. These are the things we are going to do now. So before we start our subject, before we enter into the city, any has any question, then you can ask right now. One, any doubt? Sanjeev, any doubt? Anyone? Okay. Okay, so if anyone has any doubt, then you can ask. If everything is clear, because actually we have not seen any significant thing, we have not seen, just a roadmap, just an overview. So let's start our theory of computation subject. Okay, now let's start. So the first thing that we are going to do in this theory of computation course is study the basic concepts. In every course, first we should study the basic concepts, then we should see other things. So in this course, let's see what are the very basic concepts. Okay, so today we are going to the basic concepts. This is the only thing we are going to do today, basic concepts. Okay, remember, but one more, because these basic concepts we are going to use every single day. Every single day we will use these basic concepts again and again and again and again. So these basic concepts are very important, remember. Unlike every other subject, for example, in other subjects also we have basic concepts, but it is not the case that, of course, like, okay, you use those basic concepts every day. That doesn't happen. Like in discrete mathematics also we have basic concepts, like something called set theory, definition of set, operations on a set, but we do not use them every day. When we study graph theory, at that time we do not use them. But these basic concepts that we are going to study in today's lecture, and also in tomorrow's lecture also, we will see some of the basic concepts. So first we will cover all the basic concepts, then we will start our first chapter called finite automata, the first machine we will start after seeing these basic concepts. So you must pay full attention to these basic concepts. If you were sleeping so far, then it is good time to wake up. Okay, these basic concepts, do not take them lightly, because we are going to use them again and again. So practice them a lot. Okay, let's see. The first basic concept, actually the building block, just like in discrete mathematics, you can think of this set theory, the definition of set. What is a set? That is a building block. Similarly, in this TOC subject, we have something called alphabet. That is a building block. Alphabet. What is a alphabet? This is the building block. Remember, this is the building block. Alphabet. What is alphabet? So alphabet is nothing but some set of symbols. For example, in English language you have English language, right? Okay, in this TOC course also we study languages only. So in TOC course we study some different kind of languages, but you can think of them as English language. If you want to think of some analogy, if you want to take, then you can take. You have English language. English language is actually built upon some English alphabet. We have English alphabet, for example, A, B, C, D, and so on, Z. So there are 26 symbols in English alphabet. So okay, I am denoting this English alphabet by this symbol sigma, because in this TOC course we will use this symbol sigma for our set of alphabet, for our set of input symbols. Remember, just like in English language, we have some set of symbols. These A to Z, these are the symbols. This is the alphabet. This sigma is the alphabet, and these A, B, C, D, these are the symbols. So in English language, everything that we have, every statement, every paragraph, every word, everything that we have is actually built upon this alphabet set. So from this alphabet, we make words. Okay, first we have this alphabet, then we make word. For example, we can make word, maybe apple. Okay, so this is the word we made. Now okay, after this word is made, then we make statements. Once we make a statement, then we make a paragraph. So then we make book, and these kind of things. So basically, this is the building block of English language. Similarly in TOC also we have something called alphabet. But here we have, for example, here we have 26 symbols in the alphabet. In TOC subject, we do not have this much complicated alphabet. We have only either 1, 2, 3 symbols. So these are the symbols. For example, most of the time we will use these alphabet. For example, this is alphabet, sigma equal to AB. there are only two symbols in this alphabet, symbol A, symbol B. These are the two symbols that we have. We will call them input symbols because this alphabet is known as input alphabet. Why we are calling it input alphabet? Because you see, everything that we will have from now onwards will actually be built upon this alphabet. Just like English language is built upon this English alphabet, similarly we will also build our languages over this alphabet, sigma equal to AB. Either we will use this alphabet, in different situations we can use different alphabet. Okay, for example, this alphabet also we can use 0, 1. For example, maybe we can use binary alphabet. Remember, this is binary alphabet because there are two symbols. This is also binary alphabet because there are two symbols, 0, 1. This is unary alphabet because we have only one symbol. So the first thing that we have is alphabet. So we have seen this basic concepts. Remember, this is the basic concept that we have already seen, and that is sigma. So this sigma is our input alphabet, and most of the time we are going to use this alphabet. Sometimes we are going to use this alphabet. Sometimes we will also use unary alphabet, which only has one symbol. For example, this is unary alphabet, or this is unary alphabet. Okay, sometimes very rare, sometimes we will use this alphabet also. So you can see what is the definition of alphabet. Now we can define the alphabet. Alphabet is nothing but finite set of symbols. Finite set of symbols. I can say alphabet is nothing but finite non-empty set of symbols. Non-empty set of symbols. This is the definition of alphabet. For example, this is alphabet because this is finite. There are only two symbols, so this is finite. This is non-empty. This is finite non-empty. This is finite non-empty. This is finite non-empty. This is finite non-empty. So finite non-empty set of symbols is called alphabet. This is a very simple definition. But this alphabet, whatever alphabet you have, for example, if you are defining some language, then that language is actually built upon some alphabet. Like English language is built upon English alphabet. Similarly, we will build our languages also on some alphabet. These are the few alphabets actually. These are the few alphabets that we will use frequently. But I'm not saying that these are the only alphabet possible. You can have any finite non-empty set of symbols, and that will be called alphabet. You can have your own alphabet. For example, if you see this English alphabet, this English alphabet has 26 symbols. There are 26 symbols. In the Chinese alphabet, there are more than 100 symbols. In Hindi alphabet, there are around, I think, 52 or something like, okay, I think around 50 or 52 symbols are there in the Hindi alphabet. So you can see every language has some finite non-empty set of symbols. Every language, okay, whatever language you have, whether that language is from TOC subject or whether that language is English language, Chinese language, whatever, Telugu language, Malayalam language, any language you have, that language has some finite non-empty set of symbols. So these are the building blocks of any language. Okay, so this is the definition of alphabet. Now once we have defined alphabet, then we can define something called strings. What is something called string? Then again, first let me give you some analogy. See, we have English alphabet, right? This is our English alphabet, A, B, C, D, and so on Z. This is our English alphabet. So this is just the alphabet. But what we will do with alphabet, what we will do with this A to Z, we will make words, we will make statements. So we will make statements on these alphabet, or you can say we can make words. So we can make words. For example, this is a word, APPLE. This is a word. Remember, if you see this word APPLE, then I have used this symbol A, then I have used the symbol P, then I have used the symbol P, then I have used the symbol L, then I have used the symbol E. So you can see any word that you have in English, in English language, any word that you have is nothing but a finite sequence of symbols from sigma, right? For example, whatever word you have, for example, theory, THEORY, you can see this is a finite sequence of symbols from this this sigma. Okay, so you can see in English language every word is a finite sequence of symbols from the alphabet. Similarly, in our TOC subject, we have something called strings. We have something called string. This string, sometimes it is also called word, but this is the this string, this word we will use. This is the terminology that we will use frequently. But sometimes this string is also called word. Okay, this is the next. You can say this is the synonym of string. But anyway, this is the most frequently used terminology. Now, what is the definition of string? The definition of string is finite sequence of symbols. Finite sequence of symbols from input alphabet sigma. From so we have already seen what is alphabet, what is input alphabet, we have already seen. So this is the definition of string. For example, if your sigma is 0, 1, let's assume this is your input alphabet, then what will be string? String is nothing but a finite sequence of symbols from sigma. If this is your sigma, then this is a string, because this is a finite sequence of symbols from sigma, right? For example, this is also a string. Okay, for example, this is also a string. This is also a string because this is also a finite sequence of symbols. So this is also a string. This is also a string. This 0, 1, this is also a string. So you can see all these things are string. So this is the definition of string: finite sequence of symbols from input alphabet sigma. This is the definition of string. We have something called empty string. You see one thing. Okay, we have already defined what is a string. The definition of a string we have seen. Now let's see something called length of a string. What we call length of a string. So length of a string is nothing but the number of symbols in that string. For example, if you have, let's assume this is your sigma. Let's assume this is your input alphabet a comma b. So this is your input alphabet. Now let's have any string. For example, you can have this. This is a string, right? This is a string, right? Because this is a finite sequence of symbols from input alphabet. So this is a string on this sigma. This is a string on this sigma. Now, if I ask you what is the length of this string, and remember this length of any string we denote like this. If you have any string w, then the length of w we will denote like this. Okay, these two boundaries, these two boundaries, and inside them we have this string. So this is how we will denote our, this means length of this string a b a b. So what is the length? Length is nothing but the number of symbols. 1 2 3 4 5 6. So how many symbols are there? 6. So the length of this string is nothing but 6. What is the length of this string? That is 2. What is the length of this string? That is 3. What is the length of this string? This is 1, because there are only one symbol. So you can see the length of this string is 1, this length of this string is 2, and so on. And also you can see this 6 is a finite number, and that's the definition of string, because string is a finite sequence of symbols. So hence we can say that this 6 is a finite number. This 6 is a, you can see, a natural number. So anyway, now we have something called empty string. What is this empty string? Because so far we have studied length of a string. So length of a string can be either 1, length of a string either can be 2. For example, if you want to make a string of length 1, then this is the string. If our sigma, let me take this sigma a comma b. So if this is our sigma, then on this sigma I can create a string of length 1. I can create, so this is a string of length 1, this is a string of length 1. A string of length 2 also I can create, a string of length 3 also I can create, and so on. Okay, so for any natural number n, I can create a string of length n. But I can also create a string of length 0, a string of length 0. So what we mean by string of length 0? You see, when we are talking about a string of length 1, then basically we are saying that one symbol. So length 1 means one symbol, length 2 means 2 symbol, length 3 means 3 symbol, length n means n symbol. So what do we mean by length 0? Length 0 means 0 symbol. But how to write zero symbol? Like, okay, in this in this board, if I want to write zero symbol, like what do we mean by zero symbol? Means no symbol at all, no symbol at all. So if I do not write, if I do not want to write any symbol at all, then how to show you that? Okay, how to show you, basically how to represent this zero length string? So we use a special symbol to represent zero length string. This symbol, this is known as epsilon. This is called epsilon. So this is the name of this symbol. So this is a special symbol. Remember, this is a special symbol, and this is to represent the zero length string. This is just a representation of zero length string. Like, okay, on keyboard when you are typing, at that time sometimes you give a space. So when you give a space, at that time that space works as a no symbol, right? That is space bar. So that works as a no symbol, because in that place you are not writing any symbol. So this empty string is also like this. This empty string is like a space bar. Okay, so this is like a blank symbol. Okay, there is nothing basically. So zero length string, because the length is zero. So you can say that there is no input symbol. Okay, because length 1 means one input symbol, length 2 means two input symbol. So length 0 means zero input symbol, and input symbol are a comma b. Remember, input symbols are a comma b. So here basically we have no input symbol. So to represent this empty string, we use this symbol. So this epsilon symbol is used to represent empty string, and the length of this empty string is 0, because this epsilon is empty string. Empty string means zero length string. So the length of this zero length string is 0. Okay, so this is a special string that we have. So remember this thing, the length of empty string is 0. Okay, so this epsilon is nothing but a space bar. Okay, this just like a space bar. Okay, basically this is nothing. Okay, this is just a space bar. This is just a representation of a empty string. So this we have seen. So we have seen alphabet, we have seen string, we have seen zero length string, we have seen length of a string. Now we can see some operations on string. So let me show you some operations on strings. Remember, all the things that I am teaching you right now, all these things are present in our slide also. So but I prefer to teach, I do not prefer to read out the slides. These slides I have made just for your understanding. After this class is over, then you can read these slides, but I always try to teach everything by writing. Okay, by reading these slides, actually I don't think there will be much advantage. So but all these concepts that we are studying right now, all the things that we are that I am speaking, all these things are already there in these slides also. So we have seen something called alphabet, we have seen the definition of string, we have also seen the empty string, we have also seen length of the string. Now let's see some operations on the string. So first we should define some alphabet, because a string is defined on that alphabet. If you want to make a string, then you need some input alphabet from which you can make a string. So let's take this is our input alphabet. Let's assume this is our input alphabet 0, 1. This is our input alphabet. Now we are going on this input alphabet, we can define many strings. Okay, for example, this is a string, this is a string, and so on. There are many strings you can define. Remember, this is also a string. This is the empty string. This is the representation of empty string. So this is the empty string, and so these many strings you can define on this input alphabet. Now let's see the first operation on strings. The first operation that we will see is concatenation operation. This is a very important operation. Concatenation operation. What is concatenation operation? Concatenation. Concatenation operation, what it means? It means if you have two strings, then how will you concatenate them? Remember, concatenation is nothing but like, okay, appending. Okay, for example, if I have a string AB, then if I have another string, let's assume BAB, let's assume these two. I have this string, I have this string. Then the concatenation of this string with this string is nothing but ABBAB. You can see basically I have just appended this string at the end of this string. So we have this AB, and at the end of this AB I have appended this BAB. So this concatenation operation is nothing but just append the string. So if I want to okay, this is our input alphabet. Now what is concatenation? So concatenation if I have a string, let's assume I have a string w, let's assume this is some string. Also let's assume I have a string v. Then how will we concatenate them? So the concatenation symbol is this w dot v. This dot symbol means concatenation of wv. This is nothing but wv. Just write w, then start writing v. This is the concatenation of wv. For example, if you have this okay, sorry, our input alphabet is 0 comma 1, so I should not take this because our input alphabet is 0 comma 1. So our input alphabet is, so this is our string. Let's assume this is our string 010. Okay, this is our w. Let's assume this 010 is w. Okay, now let's assume this 110, this is our v. Let's assume, so this is our string, this is our string. Now if you want to concatenate w dot v, then that is nothing but write w, then append v, then okay, write w and then append v. So this is our w dot v. This is the concatenation. So this is a very simple operation. Just append w dot v is equal to this. Now okay, remember this is w dot v. If I want to find v dot w, then what it will be? Anyone want to tell me what will be v dot w? Anyone quickly tell me what will be v dot w? Right, v dot w will be first write v, then append w. So this will be our v dot w 110010. Okay, you can also, so this is the definition of concatenation. I hope that this is clear, the definition is clear. So this is the definition of concatenation. Also one more thing, you can see that this concatenation is not commutative. You can see that this w dot v is not necessarily equal to v dot w. This w dot v is not necessarily equal to v dot w. You can see this is w dot v, this is v dot w, and you can see they are different. Okay, so you can see this is not commutative. What is commutative operation? We have already defined in the discrete mathematics course. We have already defined. So that's why I actually, before studying this TOC course, actually you should quickly go through the discrete mathematics basic concepts. You can just quickly go through those lectures. There we have already defined what is a commutative operation. And let me just quickly define what is a commutative operation. Commutative operation is nothing but operation. For example, if you have x, and let's assume this is your operation hash. Okay, x hash y. If x hash y is equal to y hash x, then we will say that this hash operation is commutative. Okay, so you can see that the multiplication operation is commutative. This multiplication operation, because you know that 4 multiplied by 5 is same as 5 multiplied by 4. Both things are same, so this multiplication operation is commutative. So what do we mean by commutative? A operation, let's assume a star, this star is the operation, then this star will be called commutative if and only if a star b is equal to b star a. If this is satisfied always, if this is always satisfied, then we will say that this star is commutative. So you can see this multiplication is commutative. You can see this addition also is commutative, because 4 plus 5 is equal to 5 plus 4. But subtraction is not commutative, because this is not same as this. These two things are different. So subtraction is not commutative, multiplication and addition are commutative. This is the definition of commutative. We have already studied this in discrete mathematics course. And you can see one thing, concatenation is not commutative. So w dot v may not be equal to v dot w. Of course, sometimes they can be same. For example, if you take w, let's assume w is 0 0, let's assume v is 0 0 0, then what will be wv? Remember this w dot v, sometimes we just neglect this dot and we directly write wv. So this wv also mean w dot v, because okay, for example in mathematics we write xy. Remember this xy is nothing but x multiplied by y, but we just ignore this multiplication, because okay, we think of this multiplication as a implicit. Okay, we just think okay it is there, but we are not showing it. So similarly this sometimes okay, with w dot v can also be written wv. Simply we can write wv. Wv means W concatenated with V, and this concatenation is nothing but append. So write W, then write V. This, so you can see this WV. What will be WV? WV will be 0 0, then 0 0 0, 5 zeros. What will be VW? VW will be first V, then W. You can see this WV is equal to VW. So sometimes they can be same, sometimes they can be same, but this does not say that they are commutative. Why? Because it is not a mandatory thing that they will be same. So we can say that this concatenation operation is not commutative. Okay, so this is the first thing. Also, what if we have empty string concatenated with some string? For example, if we have empty string concatenated with 0 1, then what will be this? Remember, if for example this is empty string concatenated with 0 1, so what will the result will be 0 1, because you see, as I told you, this concatenation, so sorry, this empty string is like a space bar. This is just like a space bar. So this empty string like, okay, does not bother. So you are just writing 0 1 0. Remember, the epsilon 0 1 is nothing but 0 1, because this is just an empty string. This is just a blank symbol. This is just a representation of the blank symbol. You can think like this. This is just a representation of blank symbol. So any string concatenated with epsilon is that string itself. For example, any string W, when you concatenate it with empty string, then you will get W. Also when this epsilon empty string is concatenated with W, then also you will get W. So this result is also important. Okay, so W dot epsilon is nothing but a empty string. This is like a blank symbol. So W dot epsilon is equal to W, and this W is equal to epsilon dot W. So basically, in the concatenation operation, this epsilon does not play any role. For example, epsilon dot epsilon, what will be epsilon dot epsilon? That will be epsilon. Okay, for example, epsilon dot epsilon dot epsilon dot epsilon, that is also epsilon. Okay, so you can see finally you will get epsilon. So this is the result about epsilon. Okay, so for example, if I give you this string, let's assume I give you this string 0 1 epsilon 0 1 1 epsilon epsilon 0 1, then what is the basically this string is equal, this string is equal to 0 1 0 1 1 0 1, because this epsilon does not play any role in the concatenation. Okay, this you can think if you want to think of this concatenation operation, then this concatenation operation you can think like multiplication. Okay, and this epsilon you can think like 1. For example, you have 3 multiplied by 1 is equal to 3, right? And this 1 multiplied by 3 is also 3. So you can think of this, if you think of this concatenation operation as multiplication operation, then you can think of this empty string as a 1, because you see this 1 does not matter in the multiplication, right? If I write y multiplied by 1 multiplied by y multiplied by x, then that is same as y multiplied by y multiplied by x. So this this 1 does not play any role. Basically, it does not bother, it does not disturb the multiplication operation. Okay, so anyway, this is called the identity element for the multiplication operation. But this identity element, these kind of terms, I do not want to use, because we have already discussed all these things in the discrete mathematics lectures. There you can refer. Right now here I do not require this identity. What do we mean by identity element? All these things we do not require, and that's why I do not want to go into it. Okay, because we will not require it. So anyway, this is the complete you can say this is the complete operation, concatenation operation we have seen. Now the second operation we can see is a reversal operation. What we have, reversal operation. So remember, right now we are seeing the operations on strings. So the next operation is reversal operation. If I give you some string, then how can you reverse it? Let's assume I give you this string 0 1 0 1. Then what will be the reverse of this string? Remember, this 0 1 0 1 is your string. If I want to make reverse, so basically this means reverse of 0 1 0 1. This is nothing but 1 0 1 0. Just write this in a reverse order. For example, okay, you can think of this TOC. What is the reverse of TOC? TOC reverse is COT. So in the school, when we were child, at that time we used to reverse our names also, okay, and we used to see whether two names are like, okay, this word Malayalam, if you see Malayalam, so if you reverse it, then this is equal to Malayalam again. So if you reverse it again, you will get Malayalam. So you can see anyway, so you can see these kind of things which when you reverse them and you get the same thing, then basically these kind of things are known as these are known as palindromes. Okay, so anyway, we will see whatever. So the thing is, this is how we reverse a string. If you have a string, then just write this string in a reverse order, you will get the reversal. So basically write this string from right to left. Okay, then you will get a, for example, if you have 0 1, then what will the reverse of 0 1? That will be 1 0. Just write it like this. Okay, what will be the reverse of 0? Reverse of 0 is 0. Okay, what will the reverse of 1? Reverse of 1 is 1. Now what is the reverse of epsilon? Remember, epsilon is nothing but a blank symbol. Okay, this is just like a blank symbol. So if you write this blank symbol in forward order or reverse order, it does not matter. So epsilon reverse is epsilon itself. Okay, so this is the operation, reversal operation. Okay, now anyone want to answer, then you can try this question. What can you say about, if you have a string, let's assume W is a string. Remember, this W is not a symbol, this is a string. Okay, this W can be some string. Let's assume this V is some string. So this W is a string, V is a string. What can you say about WVR? I am giving you some options. Option A, I am giving W reverse, V reverse. Option B, I am giving V reverse, W reverse, V reverse, W reverse. Options. So these are the two options you have. Tell me quickly which of these options is correct. WV reverse. W is a string, V is a string. WV means concatenation of W with V. Okay, remember this WV. This WV means concatenation, because this dot is there. But of course, we just sometimes we just neglect this dot, this dot. But this WV means W dot V. If we want to reverse it, then what we will get? Yes. So everyone is saying B. This is the correct answer, because you can see what is WV. You can easily prove it. You can easily prove it. What is WV? WV means there is some W, there is some string W, then there is some string V, right? So this is our WV. So there is some W, there is some V. This is our WV. Now if we want to write this WV in a reverse order, basically if we want to find the reverse of WV, then what we will do? We will write this string from right to left. So when I write this from right to left, then what will happen? I will start from here and then I will write it in this reverse order. Then first basically I am doing the reverse of V, because the first I will do reverse of V, then I will do reverse of W. So this is the proof. So WV reverse is actually equal to V reverse W reverse. You can take some example also. For example, if W is AB and let's assume V is BAA, let's assume this is the situation, then what is WV? First of all, what is WV? WV is nothing but AB BAA. This is our WV. If now if I want to make the reverse, then what will be the reverse? Reverse will be AABBA. And so basically WV reverse is this AABBA. You can see this AAB is nothing but V reverse, because when you do reverse of V, then you will get AB, and this BA is nothing but W reverse. So you can see this WV reverse is equal to V reverse W reverse. This is also an important result. So this is about reversal operation. So we have seen this reversal operation, we have seen this concatenation operation. Now we can see the next operation. What is the next operation? The third operation that we will see is a prefix operation. What is prefix operation? So prefix operation means find all the prefix of a string operation. So what is a prefix operation? For example, if I give you a string 0110, then first of all, what is the definition of a prefix? Prefix is nothing but you start from here onwards and you take some symbols. That is a prefix. For example, this 011, this is a prefix, right? For example, my name is Deepak Punia, so I have this Deepak, then I have Punia. So this Deepak is actually prefix. Okay, this DW, this is also a prefix. This DWP, this is also a prefix. So prefix, you already know the intuitive meaning of prefix. If you have anything, if you have any word, if you have any word, then the beginning part, remember from the starting, if you take some part, then that is known as prefix. Okay, if you have some word, if you have some word, and then if you take some part from the ending, if you take some part from the ending, if you take some part, then that will be called suffix. For example, this punya is a suffix. For my name, this punya is a suffix. Okay, so you can see this is the definition of prefix, this is the definition of suffix. If you remember, if you have any word, English word or whatever word you have, if you have any string, if you take some symbols from the beginning, some symbols, zero or more symbols, if you take, then you will get the prefix. And if you take some symbols from the ending, then you will get our suffix. For example, if you have this string, let's assume this is your string, then for this string you can see this 0 is a prefix. So I am writing some of the prefixes. You can see I'm writing some prefixes. So this 0 is a prefix because you can take the, basically from the beginning you can take one symbol you can take and you will get 0. So this 0 is a prefix. 0 is also a prefix because from the beginning you can take two symbols, from the beginning you can take three symbols, from the beginning you can take four symbols, from the beginning you can take all the five symbols. So this 0, this string w itself, this is a prefix of itself. So w is a prefix of itself. So you can see these are the prefixes because from the beginning you can take one symbol, two symbol, three symbol, four symbol, five symbol. Remember, from the beginning you can take zero number of symbols, zero number of symbols. So from the beginning you can take zero number of symbols, then you will get the empty string. So you can see these are the total prefixes: 1 2 3 4 5 6. So for this string w we have 6 prefixes. How many prefixes are there? 6 prefixes are there. Remember, this epsilon is a prefix of every string. For all strings, this epsilon is a prefix, and for any string w, w itself is a prefix of itself. So w, you can see w is a prefix of w, and all these things are there. So basically this is how you can find a prefix. Any doubt in finding prefix? Anyone? Any doubt in finding prefix? Anyone has any doubt how to find prefix? Now you can try suffix. So if we have, for example, 0 0 0 1 0 1, if you have this string, so this is our string. Now I am going to write all the suffix of this string. What is the definition of suffix? From the from the right hand, from the rightmost symbol, basically you take 0 or more symbols. So for example, if you do not take any symbol, then you will get empty string. This is a suffix. This 1 is a suffix because from the end you can take one symbol, from the end you can take two symbols. Remember, the 0 1 is a suffix because from the end you can take two symbols. So this 0 1 is a suffix. From the end you can take three symbols. So this 1 0 1 is also a suffix. From the end you can take four symbols. So this 0 1 0 1, this is also a suffix. From the end you can take all the five symbols. So 0 0 1 0 1 itself is a suffix. So you can see this is actually the string itself. So w itself is suffix of w. Okay, and this empty string is a suffix of every string. Okay, and these are other some suffixes: 1 2 3 4 5 6. How many suffix we have? How many suffix we have? We have total 6 different suffixes we have. 6 different suffixes we have. So this is the definition of suffix. So this is how we can find suffix and prefix. Now I am going to ask you few questions, so try to solve these questions. Time is about to over, but before we conclude our today's lecture, solve this question that I am giving you. If you have any string, let's assume you have a string w. Let's assume the length of this string is n. The length of a string is n. Then how many prefixes are there? How many prefixes are there? Quickly try this question. How many prefixes are there? prefixes are there of W? How many prefixes are there of W? The second, how many suffixes? How many suffixes are there of W? So these two questions, try to solve them quickly. How many prefixes we have? How many suffixes we have? If our string is of length n, the length of the string is n. N+1 suffixes, n+1, n+1 prefix. Correct. So there will be n+1 prefix, there will be n+1 suffix. Exactly these many prefixes, exactly these many suffixes. Because, for example, if you have length n, then to make prefix, what you have to do? To make prefix, either you can take from the beginning, you can take 0 number of symbol. If you take 0 number of symbols, is the you get. Or you can take the first symbol. So if you take the first symbol, or you can take the first two symbol, or you can take the first symbol, or you can take first three symbol, or you can take first four symbol, or you can take first and so on. So finally, basically, total and this way you will get, and this epsilon total and one prefixes will be there. Okay, n+1 prefixes will be there. Similarly, n+1 suffixes will be there, because you can take, or you can take the last symbol, or you can take last two symbol, or you can take last three symbol, and so on. So how many suffixes will be there? This is this epsilon is there, and more suffixes you can make. So n+1 total, n+1 suffixes will be there, n+1 prefixes will be there. So this is the discussion for today, and this is enough for today. The thing is, because this is the first class of TOC, and that's why I did not want to put so too much pressure on you. So that's why we have not covered many things today. Just some motivation to study this course, just to give you some interest, just to build your interest towards this course. I have given you some things. So for the first 1 hour, we discussed about the motivation, applications, some interesting questions, and overview of this course. What are the things that we are going to study? Basically, all these things we covered it. So today's lecture was actually more about overview, or you can say roadmap of TOC course, and also about the motivation, and also about the applications. So all these things we discussed today. Some basic concepts we have seen, only 3 or 4 basic concepts we have seen. Tomorrow we will complete all the basic concepts within the first half an hour. We will complete, not tomorrow, whenever we will have the next lecture. In the next lecture, basically we will cover all the basic concepts first. In the within first half an hour, within first 1 hour, we will cover all the basic concepts. Then we will start finite automata. Okay, so this is going to be, first we will study finite automata and all the things. Part 1, as I mentioned, finite automata, regular languages, all those things we will study. Then we will go to push down automata, then we will go to Turing machine, and this is how this TOC course will be over. So there is not much that we have seen today, but this is enough for the first class, because this was the first class. So from next lecture, we are going to see many concepts. For the 2 hours, complete 2 hours, we will study many concepts, and we will solve many examples on each concept that we see. Okay, some questions I will solve, some questions I will ask. So see you in the next lecture. If anyone has any doubt right now, then you can quickly ask me. Any doubt?